Welcome to a new SmartTechCheck Edu-Series episode. Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference, or WWDC, will take place in June. During WWDC events, Apple showcases their latest software and technologies. And everyone is anxious to see if Apple will preview anything related to one of their most anticipated products, expected to launch later this year, a foldable iPhone. IDC forecasts a foldable iPhone will capture 22% of the global foldable market and 34% of all foldable revenue in year one. So, the questions this video will tackle: how does a company show up 7 years late and immediately dominate? And what does that tell us about how some of the best product managers think about entering a competitive market? My name is Brett Faulk, and I've been a product management executive in multiple Fortune 100 companies and a few startups spanning more than 25 years. I'm happy to be back as a guest contributor for this SmartTechCheck Edu-Series episode. From 2010 to 2011, I worked on one of the earliest foldable phone designs, the iMerge SmartPad. So I am excited to dig into this topic. Let's get started. Before we talk about a foldable iPhone, we need to understand why Apple would build it. Look at these four numbers: $416 billion in revenue, with iPhone representing 50% of that. Services at $109 billion and growing fast. And wearables revenue declining 7% last year to $37 billion. Here's one of Apple's challenges. Half of the revenue flows from a single product line in a slowing market. iPhone unit growth is running at about 1.5% annually, projected through 2029. That's not a crisis. Apple is an extraordinary cash machine, but it is a strategic ceiling. And while Apple is hitting that ceiling, two competitors are actively pulling Apple's best customers toward form factors Apple doesn't offer. Meta is building an AI glasses category. Samsung is building a foldable category. Both are pulling premium users towards something Apple can't yet give them. That is the internal product roadmap gap many expect Apple to solve. Specifically, create new hardware that deepens ecosystem lock-in, expands the addressable market above iPhone Pro and Pro Max, and provides a new surface for Apple services to grow on. Two more signals make 2026 the right window for new breakout Apple designs. First, iOS 19 and iPadOS are converging into a native foldable interface, something Android has genuinely never solved cleanly. And second, the wearable segment needs a new premium product to reverse its decline. For the iPhone business, an iPhone Fold would be such a catalyst, and if it works, it establishes a new product tier above the Pro Max. We'll examine a future Apple wearable in a separate episode and focus on an iPhone Fold concept now. The global foldable market is around $38.7 billion in 2026. IDC forecasts 30% year-over-year growth in 2026, with the foldable category expected to grow at a compounded annual growth rate of 17% through 2029. This compares with less than 1% for the traditional smartphone segment. And with their projected launch, Apple is forecasted to take roughly 22% unit share of the foldable phone market. That gives you a base case of $12 to $13 billion in year one revenue for Apple alone. But here's the thing: that $38.7 billion isn't actually Apple's real target. Apple's real addressable market is the premium iPhone upgrade cycle. There are 1.56 billion iPhone users globally. The Pro Max sells for $1,199. If Apple converts just 5 to 8% of Pro Max buyers to a Fold at around $2,200, that's $1,000 more per customer. You're looking at a revenue opportunity that's structurally more interesting than chasing Samsung's foldable share. The conservative revenue scenario, $4 to $6 billion, assumes yield constraints limit supply and first-gen hesitation slows adoption. The bullish scenario, $18 to $22 billion by year 2 or 3, assumes strong ecosystem pull and a halo effect that lifts all of iPhone. The base case of $12 to $13 billion in year one is literally what IDC already projects. This isn't a moonshot. This is analyst consensus. So, what problem does this solve? If you're a power iPhone user today, you're probably carrying two devices: an iPhone Pro Max for everything fast, calls, maps, quick email, and either a laptop or an iPad for anything that needs more screen. For a lot of road warriors, that second or third device is an iPad mini. Compact, great for reading and light editing, or watching movies or shows on a flight, and fits nicely in a bag but not a pocket. The foldable promise has always been one device that is both phone and tablet. But every attempt so far has been compromised. Samsung's crease is the most famous problem. After 7 generations, it's better, but it's still visible, still a thing people notice, and still a friction point that makes premium buyers hesitate before spending $1,800 or more on a device they're not sure is really ready. Then there's the software problem. Specifically, Android's tablet UI has never been fully optimized for foldables. Apps that look beautiful on a phone render awkwardly on the inner display. That's not a hardware problem, it's an OS problem. I would expect Apple to solve both issues. On the crease, Apple reportedly is pursuing crease elimination to resolve what has been a defining flaw of the category. Regarding iOS software, Apple owns its entire stack. If Apple mandates foldable UI optimization as a condition for App Store featuring, every developer on the platform gets in line. Samsung simply cannot do that. Let's talk about who actually buys this and why. The core segment is road warriors and executives. One device for phone, email, reading, and presentation review. The cover screen handles everything you'd normally do on your iPhone. Open it up for deep work, split-screen documents, video calls with notes open, or just a dramatically better reading and overall viewing experience. The frequent flyer who currently carries a phone and an iPad can carry just the Fold. The iPad mini displacement story is worth taking seriously. The iPhone Fold's projected 7.76-inch inner display is close in size to the iPad mini's 8.3-inch display. At roughly $2,000 versus approximately $1,700 total for a Pro Max plus an iPad mini, the consolidation case is premium but real. On the product itself, and I want to be clear that these are reported specs, not confirmed Apple announcements. We're looking at a projected 7.76-inch inner OLED at a 4:3 ratio that's actually wider than Samsung's display, a 5.49-inch cover screen, the A20 Pro chip on TSMC's 2nm process, and a 5,800 mAh battery. The chip matters more than most people realize. The A20 Pro's neural engine is what makes Apple Intelligence genuinely useful for AI-assisted multitasking, real-time document analysis, and the new Siri LLM, all running on-device. 2 features I want you to pay attention to. First, no SIM slot, eSIM only. This is Apple forcing the market forward, the same way they pulled the headphone jack. It will frustrate some people in the short term. Long term, it's the right call. Second, anticipated side-mounted Touch ID instead of Face ID as a trade-off for hinge and overall form factor elegance with the thinnest profile possible. This is a step backward, and Apple knows it. The hinge geometry may make display-in-display Face ID too complex for Gen 1. Watch for this to be a headline Gen 2 improvement. Here is a crazy thought. An iPhone Fold's biggest competitor isn't Samsung. It's Apple's own iPhone Pro Max. An iPhone Fold targets the exact customer who would have bought a Pro Max at $1,199 or slightly higher. Apple gains $800 to $1,000 per unit in incremental revenue. In most scenarios, that's a clear win. But here's the risk. If a Pro Max buyer decides to skip their normal upgrade cycle to wait for the Fold or wait for a Gen 2 Fold, Apple loses a $1,199 sale for 1 to 2 years, then gains $2,199. The net present value depends entirely on how long the wait extends the replacement cycle. The accretion math is straightforward. A customer replacing both a Pro Max and an iPad mini with a Fold delivers $500 more per unit to Apple, a 30% increase. A customer replacing only the Pro Max delivers $1,000 more, an 83% increase. Both are good numbers. The at-risk scenario is a delayed launch. So, what's Apple's defense to minimize iPad mini cannibalization? I would not recommend artificially withholding Pro apps from an iPhone Fold. Frustrating your most valuable customers with artificial constraints isn't a strategy. The real defense is pricing. $2,000 keeps an iPhone Fold aspirational, not a routine upgrade path. And with pocketability the iPad mini cannot match. The right answer is to design pricing to protect the base and position the Fold as an addition to the lineup. Because in almost every scenario, it's accretive. The risk is the delay, and pricing is your primary lever against it. So, what are potential challenges? The biggest single risk is the hinge. Gen 1 hinge durability is completely unproven at scale. If the liquid metal hinge fails in real-world conditions, if we see $2,000 phones develop crease damage or hinge looseness after 6 months, the reputational damage is severe and very public. Apple's supply chain discipline is the mitigation, but there's no substitute for millions of real-world hours of use. This is a known unknown. The second critical risk is the crease promise itself. Apple has reportedly said they've achieved near-invisible crease elimination. If the first reviews come back saying the crease is visible, even slightly, the narrative immediately becomes Apple failed to deliver. This is a product where the marketing has preset expectations very high. Production yield challenges are already reported. A limited initial supply is manageable, but if constrained supply stretches into months while reviewers are calling out problems, that becomes a problem. And the macro headwind is real. IDC is projecting a 12.9% decline in the global smartphone market in 2026, partly driven by a memory shortage. That's not Apple specific, but it's a context every Apple analyst is already modeling. Let's put Apple and Samsung directly side by side. Samsung has 7 generations of hinge refinement. That is a genuine advantage. Samsung has been able to work through the failure modes of early foldables, hinge separation, crease damage, water intrusion, at scale across millions of devices. Apple has not done that yet. On the other hand, if Apple genuinely delivers near-invisible crease elimination in Gen 1, they've solved the problem Samsung couldn't solve in 7 generations. And that resets the category narrative entirely. Every conversation about foldables now starts from a new baseline. The software story is decidedly one-sided. iOS foldable UI, mandatory App Store optimization, the native handoff and continuity ecosystem, A20 Pro on-device intelligence. These are structural advantages Samsung cannot match. When you pick up a Galaxy Z Fold 8, you're on Android. And Android has not solved the foldable UI problem cleanly in 7 years. Where Samsung still has Apple beat. Supply chain maturity, hinge track record, launch day availability, and price. The Z Fold 8 at $1,799 is $200 to $700 less than Apple's rumored pricing. For someone sitting on the fence, that gap is real. Apple's bet is that their 1.56 billion user base, their software quality, and the crease fix will outweigh Samsung's head start. History suggests they're right. But this is Gen 1, and Gen 1 always carries the risk of the thing you didn't test quite enough. There are 4 learnings I want you to take from this analysis. Lesson 1. Late market entry is a strategy, not a failure. If you solve the category's defining flaw, Apple won't enter the foldable phone category to compete on Samsung's terms. They entered to fix the crease. If they succeed, every conversation about foldables now starts with, does it have the Apple crease fix? Don't be first. Be definitive. Lesson 2. Cannibalization is a product strategy problem before it's a finance problem. The iPhone Pro Max is likely the Fold's biggest competitor. If you launch without a clear model for replacement cycle extension, you're building on a fault line. The accretion math works in almost every scenario. The risk is a delay. Know the specific risk and plan or price against it. Lesson 3. Size the market you're going to build, not just the one you're entering. Apple doesn't walk into a $38 billion foldable market. Apple walks into a $90 billion premium upgrade market and carves a new tier within it. If you are a market leader or have the potential to define a new or emerging product category, the TAM you should model is the market your entry creates. Lesson 4. The Gen 1 list of potential constraints can feed into a strategic roadmap plan. What if no Face ID? What if no SIM slot? And what if limited launch supply? These aren't failures, but rather trade-offs. Every constraint Apple consciously chooses for Gen 1 sets up a Gen 2 story. Here's where I'll leave you. Samsung has been doing this for 7 years. Apple is doing it for the first time. And the projection is that Apple takes 34% of all the foldable revenue in year 1. That's not luck. That's not marketing magic. That's what happens when a company with a 1.56 billion user base, a developer ecosystem that moves on command, and a track record of solving the problems everyone else has normalized, enters a market that's been waiting for exactly that. The crease isn't just a display problem. It's the thing that told every premium buyer for 7 years, this isn't ready yet. Apple's answer to that will be, it is now. Whether they're right, I expect we'll find out in late 2026. But a key takeaway is the best market entries aren't always about being first. They're about being the company that brings tangible, differentiated value with the potential to redefine a product category. If you have found this product strategy analysis useful, hit subscribe. There's a lot more coming. Drop a comment with your thoughts on the most underrated risk for a projected Apple foldable iPhone. The hinge, the crease promise, portfolio cannibalization, or the replacement cycle delay. I'm curious what your point of view is. Finally, if you need help with your product strategy or solving challenges related to your roadmap planning, business strategy, marketing, messaging, brand growth, or market research, the SmartTech team is ready to help. Click on the link below to request a complimentary 60-minute planning workshop with the SmartTech team. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode. As the legendary Steve Jobs famously phrased, there is one more thing I want to share. SmartTech Research has recently completed a foldable smartphone quantitative study in the United States. The findings provide insights into the latest demand potential, category enablers, the impact of Apple's anticipated entry into the foldable category, the opportunity size for Apple, and the projected leading user experiences. I expect most everyone will find the results interesting. Subscribe and follow SmartTech Research to ensure you don't miss the published report.